Hi, Caroline Kearney here at Powell Arts, and I'm sitting with the incomparable Amy Decker in front of her piece, which will be in our It Is Written show, which will be taking place from now through October 29th with a special sneak preview during the Collingswood Arts and Crafts Fair, which will be on August 19th and 20th. Amy, do you mind introducing us to your piece?
Yes, thank you so much. This is Flare Swarm. It is watercolor paper mounted on a wood panel, and we say mixed media because it has so many things encompassed in this piece. There are pastel pencils, there are watercolors, there is acrylic, there are collage pieces of craft paper with ink that soaks through, and they are reversed. There's like a lot going on in here. And yeah, it's like this piece that starts out as, you know, these two kind of, or three pieces of the paper collaged, and then the painting kind of builds from there.
So this is an interesting composition also because it has a strong diagonal feel to it.
Yeah.
And the way that you've juxtapositioned the warmer versus the cooler here. This is a very complex piece with a lot of different layers to it, and I'm just curious, how did you start? Like, how did you approach this?
That's a great question. So I think in this one in particular, the process of making these is like the initial kind of centering approach to, like it feels like a centering practice in a way. It's like I mount the paper, I let it dry, I trim it, I sand it, and then I have these, like sort of while I'm waiting for that to kind of dry off and the surface to be ready to be worked on, I have these kind of longer pieces of brown craft paper from a roll that I've been drawing on, and what I call them word drawings, because it's basically like a stream of consciousness, usually whatever's going in my mind, or books I'm reading, or talks I'm listening to, or thoughts I'm having, and I just sort of need to discharge all that energy, and I put it out on these like long rolls of paper, and essentially the words kind of connect, and then I kind of draw into them, and so they become these like masses and not necessarily writing. It's like, I call it word drawing, and then I kind of cut them out and or tear these off of the roll of paper, and then I find shapes that I find interesting, and then I start by arranging them once the panel is dried and ready to go. I arrange them on there, and I find like sort of just a composition will emerge, and then like I adhere them, and then I begin connecting them with color. Usually I start out with like color washes and then add in layers from there, and it's like a meditative process, much like the word drawing part is.
Okay. Do you find that the word drawing part thematically informs the rest of the work? Or probably evolves over time, I would imagine.
Well, it's a good question. I think some pieces it does. This one in particular, I'm not entirely sure, because some of them, like this one, where I can sit with them for a couple of months, I'm working on them. And so, like, my mental landscape kind of changes throughout. So it might have started out with, and the other thing is that these are usually, the text is usually reversed. So some of it might be legible, but some of it is obscured. So I can't even look back and sort of say what exactly was I originally thinking about.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes on a journey.
Well, we were talking, I was speaking to an artist earlier today, Melissa Frederick, who was talking about, I had never heard the term, but I knew what she meant, asemic writing, where it's writing in characters that you imbue with meaning and shape, but that are not legible, so they look like a character system, but it's more about an idea than an actual, like, legible text.
Totally.
And so it sounds like even though you're using particular text and word drawings that you're doing, that there is a certain amount of like, it serves a function in terms of design and imbuing the piece with meaning, but it's an intuitive process, not conscientious.
Absolutely, and I think that for me, obscuring the words is a way of, is part of that, that initial discharge of putting the words out and making it into this like architectural drawing kind of looking thing. It's like a way of taking control over whatever was like flooding my mind. So then I obscure it, and so it's sort of like those kind of fade away, like
Yeah.
whatever the concerns or the
Past, present, and future all
Exactly.
allied together. Time is a flat circle, and you're putting it into the piece, and then this becomes its resting place, and it informs the piece.
I like resting place is a good term for it.
I love resting places generally. So this has a lot of different ways of my mom, Carol, who we were talking about earlier. She always says every piece of art starts with a mark, with a decision. So when somebody says I didn't make any decisions, she's always like, well, you have to make some decision because it starts with a mark. You have a lot of different ways of, it's not just that it's mixed media, it's also that you have used mark making in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about how you come to that in terms of architectural is a good way to describe it because you're basically making a structure and then building on top of it.
Yeah.
But can you talk to us a little bit about the dots and the lines and things like that? You gave us a good, about like the way you're collaging with the word drawings was really beautiful, and so now I'm really curious about the way you work with the washes and the dots and the lines and circles and things like that.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question too. I hope I can answer it. Well, I can attempt.
And if not, it's because my question was rambling, and that's what everyone should remember.
It's fine. It was. I think with this one, I think it varies with some of these. I do a lot of these panel collages because I find the whole process of making them very satisfying and so enjoyable. Like,
and it seems like it's a journey where you have these structures that you know are going to come together, but you don't quite know how.
Exactly.
But like it, so very much it's like somebody making a building versus somebody making a home.
Right.
It's about the way the elements come together that make it personal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so. And I think that some of the pieces, such as this one, I start out with like color washes because then I find sort of like I'll pick a few colors and start with them and see what kind of relationship is forming among them with the already laid down collage. And then from there, I usually like go into the patterning, like the layers of these dots and little small marks. I call them moves, like just like making all these moves. And then it kind of, some of it reflects the patterning of the letters and just this feeling of density starts to happen, and then they're like, they kind of migrate all across the surface, and then from there, I'm like, especially using that term migrate, like with I'm thinking about like birds, I think with this one a little bit, like, so they're these very like abstracted, not really wings, but wing-like sort of shapes, arm-like shapes that I sort of draw in, and then
and they give it great motion, and even this looks like, I know you just sold a piece called Winged Welcome, and this worked in parallel to it, like it's similar but not the same. But the thing is that these look almost like migrating birds, or like the way that a bird sees the city from, you're from Brooklyn, and this almost looks like two islands coming together, and this could be a mass of people, it could be a mass of birds, but it has great movement in the way it's moving along and takes you through.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's partly what you're touching on reminds me of the title, why I thought Swarm in particular, because when I see these dots, like one of my mentors suggested I take, make a lexicon of all the marks I make and just sit with it and kind of meditate and what do I associate with these? And the dots, when they're all together like this, I got this feeling of, swarm was one of the words, but also this feeling of like protection, and like when you see birds kind of flying in those formations, there's this it's like almost comforting.
It's almost comforting because it's almost like you're watching a protective community that moves and protects within itself.
System.
Yeah, and so I actually, you brought me perfectly to what my next question, more of a statement than a question, which is one of the things that I think is interesting about your work is not just that it's incorporating words, but you are also, lexicon's the perfect word, you're creating a lexicon, a vocabulary of the different moves and techniques you're making that come together to build this structure, which is very much like writing, like actually creating writing. And we tend to talk about writing, I said this earlier, we tend to talk about it as if it's just the written word. But when we actually use the verb write, we mean it as an action meaning to write, to have an idea, to think. And we're really just talking about ways we have of communicating and large language models and things like that. And I think that this is such a complex and beautiful piece and shows how you can take all of these I don't want to use that word. You can take all of these complementary and very diverse ways of mark making and doing things and put them together to create really interesting energies and stories. With even, like, this is an abstract piece, but even in an abstract piece, it still is very narrative.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that observation.
So I'm so excited to share this with people. I think it's a beautiful piece. It's very distinctive, and we hope everybody will come see it, because you really need to come see it to see all of it's so densely full of content. And I do like, last comment, I do like the way that you have done density and looseness, and you've juxtapositioned that throughout the canvas, throughout the piece. I always say canvas because I guess I'm biased as a painter.
I get it.
But it's beautiful. I hope everybody comes to see it. It will be here from now through October 29th at Powell Arts. Amy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.